Hello, DeFi boy. Welcome to the stage.
Hi, Kent. Hey, yes, I am with Fringe. Thanks for welcoming me up.
I'm glad you made it up safely. How's it going today?
It's going well. Yeah, it's early in the morning here. It's about 8:30.
Yeah, thanks for handling the time zone difference with us.
No, that's easy, man. It's all over the shop with the DeFi world because there's people everywhere interested in all of this stuff, and it's an absolute pleasure to talk to everyone.
Absolutely. Let's see here. Assuming Carlos, I imagine he's working on the issue right now. DeFi boy, would you mind just kind of giving us, starting by giving us an overview, kind of a 30,000 foot view of what Fringe Finance is?
Yes. Now, may I ask for you to invite Distbit up because he's part of our team and he'll have a few things to, he keeps me honest. He'll correct me on a couple of things. But I'll tell you about our project.
So sorry to interject. So yes, we do have an invite out to Distbit. He just needs to manually jump up on stage here.
Right. Okay. Got it. Fringe Finance, in essence, is a lending platform. We're a non-custodial lending platform. So it entails over-collateralized loans and specifically stablecoin loans collateralized by long-tail assets. So our model is familiar and it's sound. And given it's non-custodial and over-collateralized, all of that, it does not permit any of the trusted shenanigans that have happened in some of the dumpster fires of late. So I think that's really important that we just explain that our engineering and our and the concept that underlies our platform is as sound as we can possibly make it. That's really what we're about, because there are other lending platforms out there, but they primarily support the more popular and large cap tokens. But our difference, and this is where it comes to Fringe Finance, is we support lending against long tail assets. Our vision is to be the place to go for holders of long tail assets. No one else in the market really does this well or with our focus. And we've got special engineering and lending parameter settings that is tailored for long tail assets. So we're in the business of giving additional utility to holders of those long tail assets because they hold those assets because they're passionate about their project and they believe in the token's upside potential. And if they want to exercise their capital, instead of requiring them to dispose of their asset so that they can get something more in demand to pay for expenses, such as stablecoins, they need to sell their tokens. We give those token holders an option here. We believe in this because there's a lot of capital tied up in those assets, and the holders don't have many options to deploy their capital elsewhere while they wait for their tokens upside. So that's really what we're about. And I'm happy to field any questions, but and we can talk soon about the offering and the proposal that we have for the ShapeShift DAO.
Yeah, kind of going back to the original, kind of what you were saying at the beginning about the virtue of having transparent and over collateralized loans. I think like we've seen such a rousing validation of this with the big sell off that happened recently in crypto, where you had these centralized lenders just utterly melt down because of the very same lack of transparency that we've seen so many times in TradFi. Meanwhile, DeFi just keeps plugging along. Of course, crypto tokens are down, but like everything was very clear and it was very easy to see where risk was and key margin call points on things like Maker. So you guys are both definitely right in that space, and that of course is very nicely aligned with what ShapeShift is. It really what our ethos and values is. In terms of, and this might. Feel free to push this question back a little bit if there's more overview, and I see we also have Carlos up as well. But I'm really curious for the community to hear sort of like what when you say this is a protocol, a lending protocol that's more geared towards long tail assets, what about Fringe makes it more more specific to long tails, as opposed to sort of a generalized and permissionless protocol for lending that could just apply to sort of like any old ERC20?
Yes. There are a number of things. We've got some engineering, as I mentioned, and we've got some lending parameter considerations that come into play, and also just the model that we're using in terms of single capital pools, which create a greater depth of capital. So let me just touch on one or two of those. In terms of engineering, we have a couple of things that are quite important, which is limits on the lending, the debt limits against each asset. Because there is so much liquidity for any given token out there, for any given long tail token, it's quite important that we don't overextend loans or debt against that asset, because in worst case events, such as liquidations and market downturns, liquidators will want to liquidate positions that might become below the minimum collateralization level. And for them to then dispose of those assets or the collateral that they win in the liquidation, they'll need to have sufficient liquidity in the marketplace. So that's why we impose those kinds of limits. And we've spent quite a bit of time engineering and modeling the lending parameters that we apply to the long tail assets so that it's quite tailored. And we've written a few pieces on that. And I might just ask this bit, Alex, just to very briefly describe in a sentence or two really what that's about, because he's certainly largely the brains behind that, and it's worthwhile hearing, I think.
Yeah, so there's like basically two primary risks, two primary risks associated with listing small market cap assets. The first is that the price is easier to manipulate, and so therefore attacks can potentially be carried out involving manipulating the price of collateral assets in order to steal funds from the lending platform. And the second is that it's harder to liquidate loans that are collateralized in those collateral assets because there's less liquidity there's less like market liquidity available that you can sell the collateral into in order to liquidate the loan. And so basically we have created algorithms for calculating the debt limits that take into account both of those limitations and basically ensure that all of the loans that are taken out against a certain collateral asset can always be liquidated given the current market liquidity available. And there's like quite a conservative assumption, but I think that like it's hard to make or to use any other assumptions because just because of the volatility and the unpredictability of the liquidity of these collateral assets, I think that it's necessary to make those types of conservative assumptions. And so that ensures that we can always liquidate all the loans against a given collateral asset, and therefore giving lenders peace of mind that they will always be able to get their capital back in the case that the loans need to be liquidated, which allows for lower interest rates because, lenders are more willing to provide capital. And in order to prevent price manipulation attacks, we have basically figured out an algorithm for calculating the profitability of a price manipulation attack. And so we ensure that the profitability is always below zero based on the cost of manipulating the price and the potential benefits that the attacker could derive from carrying out that attack. And we do that by ensuring that the debt limit is below a certain point, which is necessary, or below the point that would be necessary for the attacker to find the attack to be profitable. And so those are the two primary ways we enable small or like low market cap collateral assets to be listed, and that other lending platforms, as far as we are aware, do not implement. And so therefore they have to like fracture liquidity in order to list low market cap collateral assets because they don't really know how to quantify the risks associated with it. And so therefore they don't want to expose all lenders to those risks because they're like less predictable and verifiable.
Fascinating. So in terms of price manipulation attacks, are you guys using like a Uniswap v3 TWAP sort of feed, or do you have Chainlink feeds in there?
Currently, go on.
Go ahead, Alex. I think you might have one or two bits of information that'll make that more interesting than I might be able to.
Well, basically, currently we're using Chainlink, but we plan on using V3. We're planning on we're looking into V2 as well, but V2 it actually is possible to use in a secure manner, believe it or not, despite all the hacks that have occurred due to projects using the V2 price feed. But it's just extremely expensive. Like it costs about 100K per year just to maintain the price feed and keep it up to date, due to the amount of updates that are necessary in order to make it secure. I can go into that if you're interested, but basically we're looking into integrating V3, and V3 is very good for price manipulation costs because it's quite expensive to manipulate the V3 Oracle, but it has the same limitations as V2 does in terms of liquidity, because you can't, if there's only like 100K of liquidity in a V3 market, then you can really only liquidate about 100K of loans in it, and yeah, so we can apply both of those algorithms to V3, and I'm currently working on calculating debt limits for V3 based markets. But yeah, we use Chainlink for all of our current markets.
Awesome. And just to clarify that first point you made, or the first method by which you sort of account for these challenges that arise when you have longer tail assets that are less liquid, is it accurate to say that you have done a bit of a trade-off where you require more collateral to be added as a way to compensate for the fact that maybe you have wider price swings due to like low liquidity here, and compensate for the relatively higher risk of price manipulation? Is it that more collateral is required in Fringe, maybe relative to other protocols that are just using, or are you dealing with like super high liquidity tokens?
Well, actually, yeah, that was the third mechanism that I forgot to mention, which is like our LVRs. So yeah, we do set, I suppose, relatively high LVRs relatively low LVRs relative to other lending platforms. And yeah, that is based off a strategy, like an algorithm that we implement that involves backtesting the price movements of that collateral asset over the last like year or so, and basically determining like what the largest drawdown was over a several hour period of that asset, and then using that, or basically setting the LVR such that if that largest drawdown occurred again, that we would still be over collateralized. We wouldn't become insolvent. And so, yeah, I suppose it's like, it seems to be more conservative than most other lending platforms, but at the same time, I don't really understand like the philosophy behind those lending platforms' choice of LVRs. A lot of the times it just seems quite arbitrary, although some of them employ less arbitrary means, of course. But yeah, that kind of seems like a very like a kind of the only logical way of going about it, because otherwise it's the case that in the past there have been drawdowns in those assets that could have resulted in the lending platform becoming under collateralized if those drawdowns occurred again, and that just seems like quite a risky bet to make that they won't occur. So yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks for the answers. That makes sense. So kind of opening it up to other facets of this, Carlos, I know you've been working on Fringe for a while, and oh, by the way, guys, Carlos has a sweet podcast. Sorry, the name escapes me right now, Carlos, but you should share a link on the stage because it always insightful stuff on your podcast.
Right on. It's the Decor podcast. I actually stopped hosting it like 2 weeks ago, but the episode featuring Kent here is pretty good. So yeah, check it out. And also, hi Kent.
Hey, how's it going, man?
All good. Like, you know how it is on the internet. Like, your internet shall always break when you have a presentation you're really been looking forward to. But
it's a hard and fast rule of like working in tech, isn't it?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I've been a part of Fringe ever since we started our attempt to build this primary lending platform this time around. There was a previous platform design that was scrapped, but like, we've been working on this for a while now, and it's just been really nice to see the platform come into operations, and especially nowadays that we get to come to these DAO meetings and pitch to you guys, talk about how, of course, your community can now take up loans using your Fox tokens as a collateral, but also just the DAO itself. It was really cool to hear about how you guys managed your loans with Rari. So, I mean, props for the huge engagement that you guys have.
Yeah, thanks. It's a very timely thing to ponder. as you might have gleaned from what I was talking about earlier, or ever tuned into the our Treasury Management Committee chats, we've devoted a lot of time and effort to thinking about the status of our RARI loans. Of course, borrowing is completely turned off right now, making that aspect of the platform sort of moot right now. So it's really cool to see like new alternatives emerging, particularly those that maybe are more tailored towards the needs of longer tail assets, of which Fox is definitely one. So if you look at the page, I just checked it out. Fox is actually listed on Fringe. Is this is on the live version?
Correct.
Yeah, we added it yesterday.
Very cool. Well, it's great to see Fox up on a new platform, and I appreciate you guys adding that. That's awesome.
Yeah, and we have also, I mean, we're also always open to finding other ways to collaborate, also with ShapeShift as a platform. But we listed Fox as a collateral asset yesterday, and if Brian or Alex could remind me what the current LVR is, but I reckon it was a bit higher than we anticipated. So it's just good to see like that you guys can be aware of it and come into the platform and look into it, and hopefully get a loan if you decide to do so.
And that's fringe.fi is the URL, correct?
Or app.fringe.fi.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
And how long have you guys been live?
We have been live for just over a month.
Excellent. With respect to the code, is any of the code sort of forked over from previous implementations or pre-existing implementations of lending platforms, or is this sort of built from the ground up with this unique use case in mind?
The good thing is we do employ a lot of existing code. I'll say a lot. Core components of Compound. So there are solid and well-proven components of that we wanted to employ here because that is really core to the platform that we're building, which is, at the end of the day, we want the engineering to be solid, and we want to bolt on a couple of things and certain philosophies and ways of thinking that best support the long tail assets. So it's not anything super innovative in terms of everything being built from the ground up. So we think that is very much a core part of our value proposition, which is solid, core, reliable code.
Yeah, code stability and security is always a good thing. If any Foxes out there want to evaluate the audits that have been done around Fringe, where can they go to for that? Is that just on your site there?
Right, fringe.fi, and it's on the front page there. I think even on the you don't even have to scroll down. HashX is one of the auditors there that we publish.
Perfect. In terms of kind of like just like the platforms that you're on, so this is just currently mainnet. Or do you have any plans to bounce over to or expand to a roll up, or are you just sort of thinking, well, at least for this initial phase, the first X amount of months, mainnet suffices for what you guys are trying to do?
We are currently in testing on other L1s and L2s. That's definitely within our sights, and we're exploring ways to do cross-chain collateralization. But, we're treading carefully there because, as this weekend demonstrates, bridging and interchain ops is something to be very wary of and to ensure that you get it right. So in terms of supporting other chains, we're intending initially to do a lift and shift so that we can support lending on those other chains. Yes.
Yeah, lately it seems like a lot of these DeFi bridges are built of like balsa wood or toothpicks or something. It's been ugly.
So we don't want to expose ourselves to too many of the risks there. Even on other chains, there are collateral assets which are wrapped and from other chains, and they're wrapped and manifest on those other L1s and L2s. And ultimately, the operators on those other chains are, by and large, dependent on the security of those bridges. So there are many considerations with regard to multi-chain operations.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a new consideration that you don't have to deal with on mainnet. A question from the stage chat here. PTT is wondering, great question. What lessons did your team learn from the Rari loan hack or / exploit?
I think Alex can talk fairly authoritatively on that one.
Yeah, so basically, that hack resulted from a reentrancy from a reentrant smart contract call that was caused by them supporting WETH as a capital asset. And so basically, currently we only support USDC as a capital asset, and so therefore it's not possible for any reentrancy attacks to occur, even if we were using the exact same code as Rari, which we are not. Yeah, and so basically, since we only support USDC as a capital asset, it's not possible for any other smart contracts, any malicious smart contracts to be called in the process of anyone interacting with the Fringe platform, and therefore it's not possible for any reentrancy attacks to occur. But yeah, basically we've paid very close attention to all of these reentrancy attacks and have ensured that our code is not vulnerable in the same way as these platforms are. But I think that the issue with like Rari and a lot of other permissionless lending platforms is that they allow for ERC20s to be listed on their lending platforms that haven't been like carefully verified and haven't been carefully vetted to ensure that they don't open up any of these reentrancy attacks or these types of composability attacks that are they're often like quite hard to foresee unless you do a lot of analysis. And so the primary way in which Fringe has a competitive advantage over them in that regard is that we only have a single lending pool, and so therefore we can like very carefully review every asset that is listed to our lending pool before it is listed, and ensure there's no like negative interactions like those reentrancy attacks. And the reason why we can do that is because we have ways of verifying the economic security of each of our collateral assets that we list, and so therefore we don't need to kind of make the trade-off of splitting up our liquidity to allow people to like make their own decisions as to what collateral assets they want to be exposed to due to not really knowing what the actual security is of those collateral assets, but rather we actually can verify that the collateral assets are economically secure when we list them, and therefore everyone can be exposed to all the collateral assets because we ensure that there's no way that they could be used to steal funds from the platform. So I think that is like the primary way that we are resistant to those types of reentrancy attacks that Rari recently experienced.
Awesome. Thanks for that thorough explanation. Anybody that wants, if you didn't quite catch that, as always, we record these on Twitch. They'll be live on Twitch shortly if you want to replay any of this again. Let's see. I do want to start to wrap things up here with Fringe because we still have Pasta Ghost after this. I want to make sure he has enough time to chat. But let's see. DeFi Boy, the stage chat seems very enamored with your voice. I agree. It's a nice combination of like a slight baritone and the Queen's English, which to our American ears sounds quite sophisticated and convincing.
Interesting, because a number of people have said that I have a good face for radio.
Video killed the radio star, as the old song saying, right?
Yeah.
Any other questions? That's true. I do have a lot of song references, huh? So, okay, just kind of pulling back and thinking again about the nexus of ShapeShift and Fringe. Obviously, there's a very direct sort of overlap now that Fringe or Fox is listed on this. So if you guys are interested in lending or borrowing with Fox, check it out. I imagine liquidity in those pools will improve over time as Fringe gets the word out about what they're doing. In terms of other, possible collaborations, there's always, and this is one thing, we've talked about before in a more one-on-one setting, but like, ShapeShift is always looking for potential DeFi products to integrate directly into its platform. with the value prop being that we get more eyeballs and users for you, and you in turn perhaps might give a rev share. That's kind of one of our core business models. This is certainly something that we always keep in mind for relevant DeFi protocols, and something that I probably would, we as a community would be interested in talking about as you guys begin to get more users, because ShapeShift is really designed to be a frictionless and sort of like nice one-stop shop for all your interfacing with the DeFi world. And another interesting thing to consider, and we don't have enough time to go down this rabbit hole, but like, do you guys have a token?
We do. We have the Fringe token, FRIN.
Okay. The reason I ask is we also have the ShapeShift DAO has a sub DAO called VFox, which is authorized to make strategic allocations into other projects, strictly tokenized projects. So that's always, I always mention that as a possible avenue for collaboration. Let's just wrap it up really quickly here with one final question from PTT. Is there any concern that Fringe could grow to a point where you can't vet every token as thoroughly as you are now? Does adding more tokens increase risk? Or perhaps it's the case that since everything is over collateralized, even if a token completely shits the bed, it doesn't really, you're accounting for that because things are over collateralized.
There's two answers to that question, or there's two parts to that question. To the second part, yes, it's over collateralized, so it offers that safety, if you like. And for the first part, our intention is to list several hundred tokens, but there will be careful consideration in listing each token, because we have modeling that we undertake, and we're further and further automating that. But at the end of the day, it is very much, we'd whitelist those tokens and we vet them according to quite a number of criteria. So it's quite important for the safety and long-term viability of the platform that the good scrutiny is applied before listing any token.
I think also as we add more collateral assets, we'll presumably be growing, and so therefore we'll have more resources to allocate to constant monitoring and to monitoring upfront before listing any of these tokens. So it might even become easier to actually to audit and to vet these tokens before we list them, due to just having more resources, really. And yeah, we'll always have monitoring occurring in real time as well, so that if anything looks suspicious or begins to look worrying with regards to any of the listed tokens, then we can then potentially stop new loans from occurring against those collateral assets and various other protective measures like that.
Awesome. Well, guys, really appreciate the concise answers and the overview. Also very cool to see Fox listed on your protocol. If anybody wants to check this out, again, that's app.fringe.fi. And the three of you, it's great to have you here in the community and in the Discord. Welcome to the community. Always feel free to let us know what's going on, the latest or greatest, or just hang out. We have a public tokenomics channel you can always jump into and geek out with us. Yeah, Carlos, yeah, absolutely. Any parting thoughts here?
I just want to say thanks, Kent. Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure, and it's really great to have the opportunity to talk to your community, because that's, we're in the business of engaging with these kinds of communities. It's what we're about. We live and breathe it, and we're really happy to be part of the, partnering with you on this. And I've always been a fan of ShapeShift, even through its various changes in life. And the guys involved there right from the get-go have really impressed me. And I think this has been just such a wonderful opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I also wanted to say for all the guys that are just in the community and in the channel commenting and all that, it's always great to get your feedback. There's nothing worse than indifference. So if you feel strongly either way about anything you see about Fringe or in our platform in general, be sure to let us know, because we take note of all the feedback. I don't know if we have time for this, Kent, or if this happened at all when my internet was down for a minute there, but did we talk about what's next in the Fringe roadmap when it comes to like the rest of the ecosystem with staking and USB?
Yeah, well, Kent mentioned he wished to wrap up. So what we might do is just in one sentence mention we have a roadmap. We're including things such as I mentioned before, cross-chain integration, fixed interest, lending and borrowing. We think that will be quite important because it opens up an entire new market to actors who wish to have certain ability to manage their costs for lending and manage their more predictable returns for borrowing. And they're important parts of really what we see is a really healthy set of opportunities in the DeFi marketplace.
Great. And yeah, even though we're wrapping up now, if you guys also want to support or post more of that like related content about your roadmap, you can do so in like our general channel, get more eyes on that. And as you evolve and progress, definitely keep us apprised here in the Discord.
Thank you. Yes, we will.
All right. Well, thanks again, guys, for jumping in. Also, you know, in dealing with the time zone differences, and we're really excited to see what you guys do next too. And thanks again for listening to ShapeShift.
Hey, our pleasure. See you. Thank you very much. Bye.
Good day.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.
See you.
All right.